Shalom. When our Torah portion begins this week, Abram is partway through a difficult journey. Last week's parsha ends by explaining that Abram, soon to become Abraham, leaves from his homeland Ur to the land of Canaan, but only makes it as far as Haran. Our portion this week, Lech Lecha, picks up with God speaking to Abram and telling him, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeit avicha el haaretz asher arecha. Go forth from your native land and your father's house to the land that I will show you. It's curious that God tells Abram to go forth from his native land when Abram is already in Haran, presumably part of the way there. Perhaps we can relate to this tonight. Maybe God tells Abram that he is starting his journey from the beginning because that's how it feels to Abram. Yes, Abram has traveled part of the way already, but he is exhausted, and it feels as though he's starting from the very beginning. Right now, we're in the aftermath of a consequential election. We, as a country, have come a long way over the course of our history, but to many of us, it feels like we are starting from a new beginning. After this election, many of us wonder, how do we build a new vision for this country? How do we communicate and fight for our values? Where do we go from here? On Wednesday, the evening after the election, many of us gathered here in the synagogue to learn from Jewish wisdom and to share our reactions to the news. I walked out of this gathering with a new understanding that how for many of us, coming to terms with the election will take time. While an election is certainly not like losing a loved one, we can learn from Jewish mourning practices in this. As our tradition teaches, there is a time immediately after an event, or a death in this case, when one is in shock, so much so that one doesn't even begin saying the mourner's Kaddish. Then the burial happens and we sit Shiva. When we sit Shiva, we take a break from our ordinary lives, we cry and gather together. Then, gradually, we re-enter normal life. It seems that many of us at this gathering on Wednesday were moving from the period of shock into that Shiva-like time in which we let our feelings flow out. Coming to terms with this election will take time for many of us. I know that many of us feel some combination of hopelessness, frustration, anger, confusion, and shock. It's important not to stifle these reactions and instead to feel them and to share them with others. As we begin to move out of this immediate moment following the election, I wonder if there's a very important lesson we can learn from the parasha. Weary and tired, God comes to Abram and tells him to set forth on a journey to Canaan. Interestingly, God offers Abraham a peek into the wonders that will happen because of Abram's journey. God says, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. In this difficult moment, when Abram realizes that his journey must go on, as if it's starting again, God offers Abram a vision of what can be. It seems that in moments when it feels like we're starting again from the beginning and we have an incredibly long way to go, it's important to have a view of what we're trying to achieve. My personal opinion is that that's good advice for Democrats. They need to present a vision, to not just defend the status quo, but offer a compelling alternative to the way things are now. But my point tonight is not to offer advice to the Democratic Party. Instead, I want to draw our attention to how powerful it can be for each and every one of us to have a vision for how things ought to be. On Rosh Hashanah, I drew from the thinker Adrienne Marie Brown. Brown teaches... Wait a second. Brown teaches that large-scale change happens when people start by influencing the world around them. Then change can scale up like a fractal, the way a fern frond replicates itself from small to big. This approach, according to Brown, is joyous. It feels good to treat others kindly, to create pockets of the world as it ought to be. In order to do this fractal work, in order to create the world as we want to see around us, we need to have a vision that we can aspire to. We learn much later in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, that having a vision need not be that difficult. We read, "Surely this Torah which I enjoin you this day is not too baffling to you, nor is it beyond your reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, 'Who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it?' Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, 'Who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us, the way we may observe it?' No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it." It seems that our visions for a better world in the coming months need not be that hard to imagine. We can conceive of a world in which everyone is treated with dignity and respect, a world in which there is peace and opportunity for all. If we look at our country or the world as a whole, that vision is challenged and in danger. But it's important to hold on to, articulate, and do each of our small parts to make that vision a reality, beginning with the world immediately around us. The journey for Abram, soon to be Abraham, is long. In fact, if you consider the journey of Abraham to be the story of the entire Tanakh, or even the story that leads to us in this very moment, Abraham's journey is incredibly long. But the journey continues, and it continues because it is guided by a conception of a better world. As we pick up the pieces of where we are now, may we have the strength to imagine how things ought to be. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will.